We see in the Old Testament in Genesis that God literally cut a covenant with Abram, didn't he? And that's how they did it back in those days. They took all these sacrificial animals, 3 years old, 3 years old, 3 years old. Turtle doves and pigeons, maybe not cut those in half because there wouldn't be much left of them if you cut them in half. Spread them apart, and you walk between, and whoever doesn't keep his word, this is what's going to happen to you. You don't keep your end of the bargain, it's like the mafia. It's good for you. If you don't do that, this is what you're going to look like, right? Fishes. But interestingly enough, God was the one who initiated the covenant. And we see that a lot, that God will come down and say, I'm making a covenant with you. And it didn't say, Abraham said, okay, God, listen, this is what I want to do. I'm going to cut some animals, and you and I are going to have an agreement, right? No, it was God initiating the whole thing and saying, this is what is going to happen. And at night, in terrifying darkness, God comes and he goes with a flaming pot, smoking pot between these, and seals the deal. So Abraham knows that God is not kidding around, although how do you cut God in half? But it's symbolic of, I'm going to keep my promises. God had several ways of keeping his promise. The rainbow was a promise that God is going to keep from destroying the world, flooding the world again. It seems like in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, people were always using sacrificial animals to seal the deal of some sort, right? Bulls, calves, rams, pigeons, turtle doves, whatever you could afford, right? In the name of forgiveness, restoration to the community, a guilt offering, where scapegoating came in, right? The community takes a goat, and everybody lays their hands on it, and they send the goat off in the wilderness, and all the guilt and sins are taken away by this goat. So that's where scapegoating had. All the sins and guilt of the community transferred to this goat, and the goat got sent off. Probably got eaten by wolves or whatever have you, but it was gone. I like this one from Leviticus 5. I'm going to read it to you. This is talking about sacrificial animals and what kind of things they do. Or when any of you utter aloud a rash oath for a bad or good purpose. I imagine that includes swearing. Whenever people, and when you come to know it, and you shall live, and you shall in any of these be guilty. When you realize your guilt in any of these, you should confess the sin you have committed, and you shall bring to the Lord as your penalty for the sin that you have committed a female from the flock. A sheep or a goat as a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for your sin. Now, how many sheep have I gone through in my life because of that very, very thing? Now, anybody knows me knows that I need a lot of sheep in my flock because, like I mentioned, you hit a hammer on your thumb and first thing comes out of your mouth. The question I have is, does Jesus serve as a sacrifice in order to seal the deal with us on our behalf with God? Is Jesus that sacrificial lamb that we talk about to seal the deal? Because we find that after Jesus' sacrifice, then there weren't any really. The Christians, the people of the way, never found use for sacrifices anymore. Kind of ended that. Watching the movie, well, part of it anyway, there's a documentary last night, Killing Lincoln, and some of the things that we never heard about with Lincoln. I'm not much of a Lincoln scholar. I know some people are. But several attempts on his life. One night when he was riding from the Capitol to some of the soldiers' homes, on his horse, he was shot at. His hat was knocked off. He made it to the end, but they found out that there was a hole in his hat where the bullet passed through. But yet, he told the soldier that he came upon not to mention a word of it to anybody, because he would not be deterred from his mission to unite the states into United States, so that all people could be one. That was his mission, and it wasn't going to be deterred. There were 5 or 6 assassination plots to kill him, but he was not to be deterred from his mission. We find in the New Testament Jesus, likewise, is not deterred. Even if the Pharisees, who we come to know as kind of those evil Pharisees, because Jesus is always lambasting the Pharisees, yet some of them say, well, Jesus, you better run because Herod's out to get you. Whether they were plotting to throw him off track from what he was doing, or if they had a genuine concern, but yet Jesus remained where he was, not deterred because he had things to do. I'm not going to move until I get my mission done and accomplished. Healing and providing, casting out demons for those who are troubled by demons. Those things in Isaiah that he said he was come here to do. We also have to remember that when Jesus was focused on his mission, he was in prayer, constant prayer, that he did that. It was his communion with God which gave him strength, which gave him direction for his mission, to keep him steadfast in what he was to do. Can we say the same? The question I have is, do you think for a moment that God or Jesus can likewise be deterred by us? Can we be the Pharisees in this scenario? Can what we do or what we say or how we act deter Jesus or God from what they will do in our lives or in the lives of anybody else? Will God act despite who we are and what we do? Can we prevent God from working in our lives or in the lives of others? How can we know? Well, I know that we can certainly be ignorant or blind or not be able to see some of the things that God is doing in our lives because we're focused on whatever else we're doing in our lives. Busy, busy, busy with things. All of us are. Are we undeterred when it comes to fulfilling our part in God's mission in this world? You know, sometimes we work best alone. And most often we work better together as a group together. We can do more, perhaps, than alone. It really depends on the situation we're in, what we're called to do. Do we get waylaid? Do we get deterred from our mission? Yes, certainly. We're not God, we're not Jesus. Certainly we get deterred. We get thrown off course. We get tired. Not everybody can be a professional violinist or basketball player or what have you, because it takes hours and hours of practice. Some say that it takes 10,000 hours to become proficient, really proficient at something. 10,000 hours. That's a long time. That's a lot of practice. Focused practice. Undeterred practice. Sometimes our goals change. Sometimes our ways of doing things change. Yet we have a mission. We have gifts. Do we use them for our mission? Yeah, well, I think we do. I think we come to an understanding and a self-evaluation and growth that we kind of identify where we really are strong at, and that's a continual journey for all of us, no matter how old you are. What do I want to do when I grow up? Well, I've got some things in mind. So how do we participate in what God is doing in this world? Do we work for peace? Work for justice? Work for feeding the hungry in the world? Work for helping others find their way in a confusing world? Work to free the oppressed in this country and abroad? What particular gifts do we have that we key into God's mission? I mean, each of us have gifts, right? We find that Jesus worked with the time that he had. Very short life. But he made every moment count. Every moment. Even those moments that he knew that he had something else in mind, going to Jerusalem for the ultimate sacrifice for us. Do we do the same? I think about the petty grudges and disagreements that I have with people. Since turning 50, I think, life is too short to be holding on to some of these things. Work it out. It's a challenge for myself. It's a challenge for all of us. Work it out. It's not worth the time and effort. There are more important things. We have people that have survived illnesses that have been catastrophic, and yet they view it each day as a gift for something new and exciting. Each day is a gift for us to do something new, to key into what God's mission is for us. I was also thinking about Jesus moving his way toward Jerusalem, knowing full well that he was going to be killed, knowing that that was his destination, that anywhere outside of Jerusalem he was safe, but once he gets to Jerusalem, that's where he wants to go. Watching a documentary on Netflix called The Marine Corps, if you can probably relate to this, they said usually when there's gunfire, people run away from it. He said the Marines run toward it. I find that interesting. Is it brave? Yeah. Is it impossible? No. But it takes a special kind of a person to realize that they may not be coming back, especially in wartime or in Jesus. Of course, he knew he was coming back for another round two, I would say, with his disciples after his resurrection. But it seems to be noble in a lot of respects. Some situations seem impossible for us to wrap our brains around. To wrap our brains around Jesus wanting to go to Jerusalem to be killed, knowing full well that would we do the same? I don't know. Taking a special person to do something like that, run into the face of danger when everyone else is running away from it. Is it impossible? No. I don't think anything is impossible. God is with us. God has always been with us. Situations that seem impossible, like my boss said, just simply take longer to accomplish. More prayer, more meditation, more something to prepare us for the way. We find in the Genesis story that God made a covenant, an ironclad covenant with his people several times. And Jesus makes his covenant with us through his life, his death and resurrection, his sacrifices for us. And with this terrifying darkness that Abram felt, and sometimes we feel too, that God is still in this darkness guiding us and still making the promises and still giving us hope, even in our darkest times, in Abram's darkest time, saying, this is what I'm going to do, and don't you forget it, because it's not going to fail. I'm not going to be undeterred in what I'm going to do with you and for you. I am with you always. There was part of this that I think is important to read in Luke. In our darkest times, when we find that we don't fit the mission of God, we don't find that we have the gifts necessary to help anyone, that we're lost, that we're alone. In Luke, if you'll read, how often have I desired to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. That is the promise. That is the willingness of God, of Jesus Christ, to gather us together and to protect us, to give us meaning and hope, when beyond all that we can see in our own lives that there is none, but there is. And Jesus, once again, tells his people, confesses to them, lets them know that blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. And that's it for us. The one who comes in the name of the Lord will be there for us, to give us hope, to protect us like a chicken with wings spread out over us so that no harm comes to us. We are that Jerusalem, the troubled city that Jesus so much wants to protect and so desires in his sacrifice to be there for us and is there for us. Amen.